And welcome to Telewizja Republika. Today we begin with a development from the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. The Assembly has adopted a resolution recognizing Russia's actions in Ukraine as genocide against its people. This resolution also calls for efforts towards the deoccupation of Crimea and all occupied Ukrainian territories and the establishment of a special tribunal to hold Russia accountable for war crimes. Well, finally. But that's only the resolution. The resolution also demands an international and national investigation into mass atrocities, including murders, torture, and rape by the Russian army, which basically means by Russian states. What makes the people who lead this state personally responsible and hopefully one day simply wanted for those crimes. Turning to recent events on the ground, Russian attacks on Ukraine continue to inflict severe damage and casualties. In Kharkiv, a Russian strike on a post office killed a civilian and injured 9 others, including the infant. The head of the regional administration reported that a post office employee was among the casualties. In Kyiv, missile debris caused a fire in a residential complex, injuring several people, including a child. Air defense systems managed to intercept some of the missiles, but the damage highlights the ongoing threat to civilian areas. The worst attack of the last few days was in the town of Vilniansk in Zaporizhia Oblast. On June 29th, the Russian dropped 2 missiles on the small town, killing 7 people, including 3 children, injuring at least 36 people, according to official authorities. On the front lines, Ukrainian forces have made notable advances around Vovchansk. Ukrainian troops now control all access to an industrial plant in the city, effectively encircling Russian forces. This strategic location between Kharkiv and Russian border has been a target for weeks. The Institute for the Study of War reports that Ukrainian forces has encircled elements of the Russian 83rd Airborne Brigade, those mass butchers, as we know, within the plant, although direct assaults are being avoided to minimize casualties. In another ongoing concern, we've previously highlighted on our program the issue of GPS jamming by Russian forces. Recent reports confirmed that this remains a significant problem, with over 500 UK military flights over Eastern Europe experiencing GPS interference in the first 4 months of 2024. This includes not only jamming, but also spoofing, where incorrect signals are sent to mislead aircraft about their locations. More than 40,000 failures in satellite navigation systems were reported by commercial airlines operating over Eastern Europe last year. Finally, a brief note on a lighter, albeit controversial topic. Kanye West has been spotted in Moscow for the birthday celebrations of fashion designer Gosha Rubchinskiy. Kanye West, who has stirred controversy with his political statements in the United States and was recently accused of praising Adolf Hitler, has expressed admiration for President Vladimir Putin in the past. Despite rumors of a concert, there is no official confirmation of the performance. This visit is an exception, as Western artists have largely avoided Russia due to actions in Ukraine. Kanye West, shame on you, bitch. You can join us on rackracon.com. That's our website. You can leave us your email. This is our Substack. We'll get back to you with our emails, with our reports on daily developments on various fronts of the ongoing war against the West, not only military fronts, but also the cultural war, where Kanye West decided, apparently, to switch sides. That's what we are going to talk about on my show. My name is Michał and this is Rackracon. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
It's Monday, so Joe Lindsley is again on Telewizja Republika. Joe, great to see you again. Sad news, as always when we talk about the Russian war against Ukraine. But this time we wanted to talk about the people who come from abroad to Ukraine to give their lives for the freedom of this the state that is fighting for its own freedom. But my thinking is that those guys from Europe, from Great Britain, like last days, give their lives for our common values, which is very often not understood well outside of Ukraine. You got your thoughts on what happened lately?
Yeah, well, we've seen, since 2022, so many foreigners who've come here to help, inspired, coming here for different reasons, many of them veterans, but many people in some ways seeking some kind of redemption and finding real purpose here. And one of them was Peter Fouché. His nickname was Peter Hasta la Vista Fouché, and he's been here since 2022, mainly working with a group called Project Konstantin. And it's a group, it's a Ukrainian project that he helped found with Ukrainian civilians to work as medics primarily at the front line, to evacuate people, to bring humanitarian supplies. And he spent most of his time in eastern Ukraine. He was killed a few days ago by the Russians. He already was well beloved beyond just the people he worked with, because especially in those past difficult months when Washington was dithering on whether or not to support Ukraine, Peter made some very passionate videos from the front lines, whether it was in the snow or in the sunshine, saying that he was ashamed to be from the West, because he saw, we have all this opportunity, and all the West has to do, he said, is to send ammunition, and that's it. And all the Ukrainians and the other people from around the world on the ground, volunteers, will do the work. And you could feel, because he was surrounded. He was tending to the wounded, trying to save lives. He already had lost some of his comrades with Project Konstantin, and you could hear the pain in his voice. And he spoke very forcefully about the abrogation of responsibility by the West. And he kept pushing this warning that if Ukraine falls, just remember what happened in Europe when other countries fell in the 1930s. If Ukraine falls, this is coming for you. And so that was his passionate message. And he was well loved. In fact, there was a video which we can share of the Ukrainian woman who's a partner with him in this project, and just how absolutely devastated she could barely speak through the tears, about this loss. And the Project Konstantin released a statement saying, "We will honor Peter's memory by continuing the work he was so passionate about, carrying forward his legacy of courage and kindness, of fighting for what is right, and of speaking up in the face of injustice. Rest in peace, Peter. We know that our Heavenly Father has welcomed you into his arms." And so this sense of, you keep going no matter what. But what I really saw in listening to those videos is the great bonds that have formed with Ukrainians and people from all over the world who've come here, knowing that they could get killed at any moment. And this is, it's very sad, but it gives people encouragement to keep going.
Yeah, there are lots of people who give their lives, not only people who were born in Ukraine, not even Ukrainian citizens. Among them, there are also Polish citizens who just traveled there, went there to fight Ruskies and to kill them, basically, because in Central Europe, we know what does it mean that Russia invades any of the Central European Union or Central European or Eastern European states. It means that their appetite for destruction, for imperialism is only getting bigger and bigger. So it's just a matter of time when they go for next states. And this is basically what late Polish President Lech Kaczyński said back then in 2008 in Tbilisi, when he famously stated that this is Georgia now, Ukraine is going to be next, then probably Baltic states, and who knows, maybe my home country, Poland, later on. Lech Kaczyński didn't survive to see it because he was killed on 10th April 2010. We have no doubt who killed him. It was Russia. It was an assassination. But that's the reality of the things that we are talking about here. So thanks, Joe, for bringing up the brave people who give their lives for our common values.
And Michał, if I could say, as you talk about what happened in Poland, as you explained that history, it's a reminder that this is not new. Moscow has been behaving this way, throughout the 20th century, and we had yet another reminder of that, of the unchanged behavior and attitude of Moscow. Over the weekend, there was a prisoner exchange, and two among the Ukrainian prisoners released were two Greek Catholic priests, not soldiers, never been soldiers, Greek Catholic priests who were living in Russian captivity. They look totally different from the way they did, almost unrecognizable from when they were captured. The Vatican did help negotiate their release, but yet another reminder, like just during the Soviet times, the Greek Catholic Church was illegal here in Western Ukraine under Soviet rule, absolutely illegal. The church was underground until 1991. And it's another thing that as soon as Russia occupies territory, churches like that are not Russian Orthodox are oppressed. They are wiped out. And this is further evidence to see that the trauma that those priests went through, as we saw their return a couple of days ago. Again, not soldiers, but priests captured by the Russian regime.
And that's another pattern that we know too well here in this part of Europe. As for example, in Katoń, not only priests, but also rabbis from Poland were murdered. So Russia never made any distinctions. They were just killing the citizens of the states and the members of the nations they hate with a special hatred against people like priests, like rabbis, like members of the different churches with the Eastern churches as well. So that's just the way the Russian secret services and this criminal state behaves. Joe, we are ahead of very important meeting, or should I say the meeting that should be actually important. In 1 week, on Tuesday, another NATO summit starts. This NATO summit is scheduled and is planned to take place in Washington, D.C. I was present in Lithuania, in Vilnius, during the previous NATO summit. And actually, there was a summit that changed nothing. And everyone who was present there, with the leaders of heads of states and actually all the delegations, everyone knew that nothing changed in terms of Russian aggression against Ukraine. And I think that nothing will change also next week. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same when we see, from a couple of weeks ago, the big hoopla about, European Union beginning some sort of process, some permutation of a process for Ukraine to think about, to begin to, have some inkling of an idea of membership. These things tend to be all talk. I mean, this is, there's no, I mean, if when I speak with people in Washington, whether it was in 2021, 2022, now, there is zero desire. There never has been desire for Ukraine to be part of NATO. This is only Russian. It's a Russian myth to justify the genocidal war and Russia's attempt to take over Ukraine so that then they can have the resources of Ukraine to invade other countries. In fact, over the weekend, leading Russian media personalities were saying exactly this point, that they need to erase Ukrainian statehood, and then they're coming for Europe. So NATO, it's a chameleon, both when it comes to the Russian propaganda, but then when you listen to the NATO chatter about Ukraine, they obviously they don't want membership for Ukraine anytime soon, because then they would feel obliged to defend Ukraine even more. This is why it's a very interesting proposal from former U.S. Ambassador Kurt Volker to NATO under George W. Bush. He was that ambassador. And he put forth one of the most creative thoughts I've heard about this, that, what about some kind of arrangement where the areas of Ukraine that are not occupied by Russia are protected by NATO totally, and the Russian occupied parts of Ukraine, NATO won't touch. And maybe this could be a compromise. It's up to Ukrainians with weapons from around the world to get back those occupied territories. But NATO could say, we're going to protect the hell out of Kharkiv, Kyiv, Odessa, etc., with jets.
But
and Patriot
Joe,
missiles.
that's just sorry to interrupt you, but that idea, it's just coming back to the same old story of freezing the conflict. I know that this is probably something else, that the Russian idea of keeping what they have stolen, but in a way, this is again an attempt to create some second degree or second category of sovereignty. A sovereignty over only a certain part of territory. Nothing like this can exist with the neighborhood of terrorist criminal state like Russia, because it's only a matter of time when this will be, Russia will use any leverage, any tool, any pretext, basically any reason to change it in the way that Transnistria was treated and was created, Abkhazia, Ossetia, the list goes on and on.
Well, I mean, this is exactly why NATO has absolutely zero interest, and it's ridiculous even to when people, I mean, I feel bad when I hear Ukrainians talking about we want to be part of NATO. It's not happening. There's zero interest. But why I liked Kurt Volker's proposal, because maybe it could begin to chip away and get people to start to see some possibilities. If NATO would agree to absolutely protect places of Ukraine that are currently free, that would be a big change. And if you look at it, for example, did you know Hawaii? The state of Hawaii is not protected by NATO because it joined the United States after the treaty was signed in the late 1940s, and the treaty applies to territory within certain parallels on the planet. And Hawaii, so look it up, Hawaii is not protected by NATO. If some other country attacked Hawaii, NATO would not be obliged to respond. So by token, why can't
Hawaii is protected by some other entity. I think that NATO minus this entity means almost nothing. So that tells actually this is very interesting because it tells a lot about what is the real role of United States in NATO itself.
Yeah, and I think that's why the bigger question. People here are starting to say, and I've been saying it, we should talk more about NATO should join Ukraine because Ukraine's actually doing what NATO was meant to do. So forget about Ukraine joining NATO. I think that there's some truth to that, even when it comes to the European Union. Like, they need Ukraine more than Ukraine needs them in a way, because Ukraine's holding the line.
No, the problem, Joe, sorry, I won't agree. The problem is, and I'm maybe more pessimistic based on my deep disagreement with what European Union does. European Union needs Russia. Ukraine, for Germany mainly, is a problem. Russia is a rich source of raw materials, of cheap labor, of vast territories, and quite a huge population to make business with. Ukraine is a problem, and that's the biggest, and that's the deepest reason behind the behavior of states like Germany and European Union in general.
I think we could say the European people, including the German people, need Ukraine. European elites need and actually love Russia and continue to get oil from Russia. Most of Russia's oil was exported eventually to Europe, or natural gas. Europe had a plurality of Russian natural gas exports as of May. So that, yeah, for all their talk, they're still heavily reliant upon it and probably even sympathetic in some ways. And here's where I think we look at, talking about NATO, another thing coming up in 2 weeks is the Republican convention. And we look at what happened in the debate, and this is very important. Which way is Washington going to go for Ukraine? And we have a situation where, you have President Biden, and we can see now, and now we're allowed to talk about it, is not totally there. So who's really been running his policy? Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, for one. And by the way, Jake Sullivan was in power as Biden's advisor, but also groomed by Hillary and Obama in 2014. So the same people that ran the policy when Putin took Crimea in 2014 and they refused to send weapons to Ukraine are the very same people now in power. So that's something we have to look at. And I think as the Democrats analyze if they want to have a different candidate, do they also want that candidate to come attached with the same policy people that have been doing this since 2014 that helped us get into this situation?
Yeah, but Joe, this is very interesting because actually, and I'm glad that you mentioned the debate. We as you know, and as our viewers know, spent some time in New York and Washington right ahead of the debate. We've been reporting. We've seen Trump's rally in Philadelphia. The interesting thing here, and that's maybe a unique perspective of a citizen of a state like Poland. You just mentioned the disastrous policies of the reset American politicians like Hillary Clinton. She was the one who was passing the reset baton to Sergei Lavrov in Geneva. Those are the authors of the pathetic policy against against Russia, actually going hand in hand with Russia, more like challenging Russia. And I remember discussions ahead of 2016 presidential election when people who seem to know American politics quite well were trying to convince me and my colleagues here that Hillary Clinton would be a great president of the United States because she would kick Putin in the balls and solve the problem of Vladimir Putin. But what happened, and we've heard back then that Trump is going to sit in the pocket of Putin and is not going to do anything. But when he became a president, despite all the things that are unacceptable in terms of rhetoric, the thing was, Donald Trump moved U.S. troops to the eastern NATO flank. No president of the United States in the history ever did that. Donald Trump decided to do it. He froze Nord Stream 2 effectively, and as long as Donald Trump was president of the United States, Nord Stream 2 was not a running entity. It changed on Biden's shift. And third, maybe not that important from a geopolitical perspective, but from the energy perspective of Central Europe, fundamental thing, he opened the sales of shale gas, what ruined Russian monopolistic position in Central Europe, which is fundamental for Russia. Only those three decisions are totally against Putin's imperialism. And that raises questions regarding the future, the expectations, what we see in the mainstream media, and what can we expect. And on the other hand, those remarks of Donald Trump and his people that are very hard to digest when we know the everyday reality of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Your thoughts?
Well, I think first we have to correct what Trump said during the debate. He continues this line of rhetoric that Zelensky is taking billions of dollars from the U.S. It's not true. It's a lie. Most of that money in the American packages for Ukraine is evaluation of old equipment. In fact, for the first time ever, that was the one cogent point of Biden during the debate. He said, no, it's not actual money. It's a valuation of equipment. So that's a crazy lie that Russian propaganda loves, and Trump, for some reason, continues to repeat it. But beyond that, we do have to look at what are the actions of those in power when they're in power. Trump did send lethal aid to Ukraine. Everyone likes to focus on, many people like to focus on that phone call with President Zelensky. There's a lot more that we should delve into on that in these coming months, because, I mean, come on. Trump was impeached because of a phone call with the president of a foreign nation, not Mozambique, Ukraine. I mean, the nation that's been so much the heart of everything that's happening in the world. This is very interesting, and we should examine it. But ultimately, he did send lethal aid to Ukraine in a way that Obama-Biden refused to do. Remember in 2012, debating Mitt Romney, Romney was saying as a candidate that Russia is our biggest geopolitical threat. And President Obama had that very snide line, the 1980s called, they want their foreign policy back. Absolutely dismissive of Romney there. And it turns out Romney was prescient just 2 years later. And 2 years later in 2014, Joe Biden's son was making money from Burisma, which is connected to Putin interest, the regime that fled Ukraine in 2014 that benefited from Putin taking Crimea. His son was making money from that firm. Zelensky actually hired as his first press secretary the woman who investigated that, broke that story in the New York Times. None of this really is talked about, but I think it's very important as we try to figure out, because I think more important as to who is in the White House is who will staff the White House. And we see that now. I mean, with President Biden, I mean, it's sad, but, he doesn't seem to know where he is often. So who works for him is what matters. And will those people, no matter who's the candidate for the Democrats, will it still be the same people? That's really the question. And I think we let ourselves get distracted by the theatrics. But the president, in so many ways, is like the king of England, right? The really thing that matters is who are the people running policy. And that's where we have to get to the heart of it. It's the same when we talk about F-16s. Like, we can talk about it, till the cows come home. But the deeper question is there a will for Ukrainian victory? Is there a belief that Ukraine can win and that the breakup of the Russian Federation will be good for the world, that stopping Russian aggression will be good for the world? Do people in Washington actually believe that or not? And then once we get the answer to that question, we can figure out, okay, when you're going to send these weapons. So I think we tend to miss the heart of the issue. We get lost in the theatrics, and we're missing the sort of the facts that are right before us. So we got to look at the records of Trump and Biden as president, but especially of the people who are in their circle. And that's what we need to examine, I think, in these coming weeks, where, you know, we have so many elections that are going to affect the course of this war, whether it's in France and the UK, but especially the US. And we got to pay attention.
There's an old saying that lots of things have to change so that everything will stay as it was before those changes. I don't remember how exactly it sounds, but the sense is pretty obvious. Joe, 1 minute for you for your fundraising. We strongly encourage our viewers to support your project, to send support to Ukraine so that you may have a part in the victory of a free world over the orcs and the forces of evil.
Thanks, Michał. Yeah, we welcome support as always at UkrainianFreedomNews.com, and you can follow my daily reports in Chicago, WGN Radio. One thing that we're finding, we have to purchase a lot of for people working on various projects around the country. These weeks are not generators, but massive power banks, so that people can have access to electricity. The electrical problem is very serious. Here in Lviv, people have blackouts sometimes a total of 14 hours a day. This is a big problem. It's summertime, so you don't feel the pain as much. But for people to do their work for victory, those tools are very necessary. And we're continuing, of course, to get drones to the front. So especially now, power banks and drones, we welcome support at UkrainianFreedomNews.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Lindsley. Joe, thank you very much. We'll see each other next week. I don't know if we are going to have a chance to talk next week as the NATO summit is on, but surely pretty soon. Thanks a lot, Joe.
I hope we can. I hope you'll be there at the summit and we can analyze it.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we will try to be there. You can leave your thoughts on rackracon.com. You can send us your email and send us an email on this website to share your views, share your ideas, maybe interesting links or things that we should discuss in the context of the ongoing war against the Western civilization. The Russian aggression against Ukraine is surely part of it. We see each other tomorrow. Stay safe. Ciao, ciao. Bye.